all things MSP Live. And of course, tonight's session, hopefully we've fixed, tweaked, whatever, to make sure that we don't crash and burn tonight. Since over the last, couple of episodes, just two, I think, we've had a couple of issues. I retweaked some things with the restream settings. I also did lower it to 720p instead of 1080. So if you guys notice a change in the resolution, let me know so that I can be aware that the quality has suffered, which I don't want to do. But I may not have a choice until we get some fiber internet in here. Anyway, let me do my normal checking on the live streams. It looks like we are live on YouTube, so that's good. Or no, that's Facebook I'm looking at. So let me go ahead and actually click on watch live and do a comment. Hey, Facebook. See if that shows up. Yep, so that one's working. Oh, let's see on LinkedIn. So, hey, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is working. And so let's check. And it looks like YouTube is working as well. So let's just make sure the comments are working on YouTube. Look at that. We have a trifecta again, as long as Restream keeps running. It's been interesting. You know, we're tech people, so we like to, noodle on these things. And for all intents and purposes, everything has been working fine on this end. It just seems like Restream has been, just hiccuping for some reason, because we've always been able to start again. But I got my bandwidth requirements. I think I was running at about 4.8 megabits per second recommended as upload. Now I should have that because I'm always testing at around 10. And on Wednesday nights, nobody else is home, so nothing else should be using bandwidth. But here we are. And at all the settings that I changed it to now, it is, I'm down to 1 megabit per second in terms of the requirements for streaming up to Restream. So hopefully this week will be better than the last two. All right. I did want to do a little shout out and ask if you guys had seen, because I've been doing some short format videos lately. Done a series of two just over the past 2 days in regards to this number that I saw. And the number was related to HVAC companies, but we know HVAC companies, because they're technician driven, they're primarily a service business, are very similar in a lot of ways to MSPs. So I asked the group in the video whether or not they thought that $350,000 to $500,000 per employee of annual revenue was a good number for an MSP. And I got some interesting comments back. I think some of them were in that range. Others were much higher than that, around $1 million. And I'll call out Keith Nelson because that was his comment. And by the way, not surprising from Keith, because Keith runs a very specialized, almost can't, oh, it's going to be one of those nights. Can't call it an MSP, but highly profitable because he creates solutions for his clients, which at the end of the day should be what a lot of us are doing. All right. So Keith is actually mentioning in the comments, and I'll throw this one up here so that everybody can see it. The first known company that was a managed service provider offering MSP services in California was an HVAC company. And that's true. A lot of HVAC companies that have turned to a recurring revenue model have called themselves managed service providers. So thank you, Keith, for that reminder. And yes, by the way, yes, sir, I am going to Nashville for Exchange, as is our guest tonight. But I'm going to introduce him in just a second after we get this intro out of the way. Let's get this thing started. All right, welcome back everybody to another All Things MSP Live. And really do appreciate everybody being here. This is, obviously we're trying this again because we've had some trouble with the live stream in the last couple of weeks. I've tweaked some settings, so hopefully we won't have those issues this week. All right, we do have Keith in the house. We have Degley in the house. We've got several people because we've got more than just the two of them. So if you're watching, give a shout out in the comments. Let us know you're here. And we're going to be talking about selling cybersecurity tonight and the importance of vulnerability. It's really, selling cybersecurity is one of those things because, I mean, come on, guys, let's face it, and gals, we are not the best sellers nor marketers traditionally because we come from a technical background, right? And so selling has always been difficult. Selling cybersecurity is also been kind of difficult, and it's one of the primary drivers of our business right now. And we need to know how to sell it, right? So it's a very important topic. It's a timely topic. And so tonight, joining me, a lot of you know this person. He's a 20-year veteran in the channel. He's worked for multiple vendors. He's an MSP evangelist, trying to do everything he can to make MSPs successful in sales and selling cybersecurity services in general, which, the educational piece makes him a man after my own heart. Anyway, he has spoken all over the world on this topic, and he's hoping to make a difference every single day in the lives of MSPs to help them grow. So he lives in Atlanta. He's got a wife and 3 dogs, and he's been a drummer since he's been 8 years old. He's the VP Channel of Sales at Nodeware. Everybody, welcome Matthew Koenig. Hey, Matt.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I hate it when my cough sneaks up on me right at the end, or right at the beginning of when I'm trying to start one of these.
Brother,
so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself while I take a swig of water?
Sure. Well, I probably know a lot of you, but my name is Matthew Koenig. I'm the VP of Channel Sales at Nodeware. Been around the industry forever, starting at Rapid Fire Tools and coming through today. And I love you all. I love this industry. I love working with MSPs, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, last time I was in between gigs, I got a bunch of calls about going outside the channel. It took me exactly 30 seconds to tell every single one of them, no, this is where I want to be. This is my life, and this is what I love to do.
It's amazing how many of us feel that way, right?
We're all a bunch of sick people, but it is what it is.
Or, it's just the join the dark side, we have cookies thing. Mike Perry is in the house, saying that you also have a great haircut.
Thank you, sir.
Mike, you would know. All right. So this is an important topic, right? And, you are an ideal person to talk about this because you've been doing it, for quite a long time. You and I are both, kind of at the same stage of life, we'll just call it right now. And, so in terms of selling cybersecurity, this is something that I've actually been thinking about and I wanted to bring up today because cybersecurity, it's very easy to fall into the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt model of selling cybersecurity because there are real threats, right? It's not something that's made up, but a lot of people don't like FUD because there's a lot of made up FUD. And I don't know how many times I'm going to say FUD, but what is your thought on that? And are there ways that we can approach selling cybersecurity where we can take a detour from FUD or maybe a FUD light type of attitude towards it?
Absolutely. First of all, I think selling on FUD is the stupidest thing you can do in the history of mankind. Let me explain why. because I can say that, but let me back it up. I study a lot of psychology because what is sales? It's psychology. And what I'll tell you is over time, talking to customers, talking to MSPs, and doing it myself, if you scare someone, you know what you do? You paralyze them. Everybody always assumed that if I scare you, I'm going to scare you into action. Humanly, emotionally, and the way we're wired, if you scare the shit out of me, it's fight or flight. And in this particular case, if you scare the shit out of me, now I don't want to make the wrong decision and what's the right decision. And you're the one that scared me, so you're not going to give me the right decision necessarily.
Right.
Now I got to research it. Now I got to take time. You've just destroyed everything about your sale.
And
now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I've heard it this way too. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. And none of those options are good because you either can create an adversarial buyer, mm-hmm. somebody who's just going to plain run away and ghost you, or mm-hmm. like you said, they're going to be paralyzed.
Now, there are ways around it though. And what I always teach, and I teach it in my sessions, I teach it when I consult, I teach it all over the place, is what you have to do is you've got to get someone inside their own head about their own business. Nobody, these SMBs all the time, I don't hear about this. I don't want to, talking to them about Home Depot being hacked, Target being hacked, they don't care. They're big, huge businesses. And you're comparing them to them. And guess what? Not even in the same, I can't even get there mentally. But if I look at you, Mr. Business Owner, and I say something around the fact of a lot of curiosity, what would it look like if your business was down for 5 days? Not, oh my God, your business can, what would it look like? Let's talk through that. What would it look like? What would happen? Get them thinking about their business and what would it look like? How would it feel? Are two incredibly easy and effective ways to pose a question that's going to make someone go inside their own head, think about their own business, think about their own stuff, and elicit a reaction that you can actually work with, as opposed to one that doesn't matter, you have no way of dealing with, and nor do they actually care. You just tune them out.
Yep. So it's more like you're leading them to that topic rather than beating them over the head with it.
Exactly. Because they've never thought about it, right? If you got these SMBs that go, I'll never get hacked. And I got answers for that one too, but let's focus on this one. Fine. But what if you did? Humor me. What would it look like if you did? Well, I'd lose this much money. I might have to lay off employees. Now, you don't tell them that, let them talk. But these are the kind of things that may go through their head. And then you can follow up with, well, how would that feel?
Right. Because the fear is now coming from them instead of coming from you.
Right. Or what would it feel like if you had to lay off half your staff because of a breach? Talk me through that. Talk me through the emotional aspect of that. Because I've known lots of companies that have had that happen too. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. But tell me what that would feel like for you. Now, what's also cool about these questions is they have to answer them. And let me explain why that is. I don't mean they literally have to answer them. But if you're having a conversation, these are the kind of questions where if they don't answer, they've got two choices: to answer the question or to sit there and go, right? It's not a yes or a no. It's not a, I'm shutting you down. It's, you have to answer it or sit there and stare.
Yep.
But guess what? As a human, 99% of most people aren't going to sit there and stare at you. They're going to actually give you an answer.
Right. So Keith came up with a good comment here that I'll go ahead and bring up. He says, too many MSPs think agent product price is the biggest obstacle, but employers are more concerned about business disruption. They want to know that you can secure their environment without stopping workflows. Those are business problems that, these people are asking you to solve, not IT problems.
Yep. And that's the reality, right? Because one of the things I always talk about, and to Keith's point, Look, as an MSP, you should be their trusted advisor. You should be talking in business terms. There's no business owner that cares or will talk about technical stuff. As soon as you do that, they've turned you off in their head and they're thinking about the next thing they need to do. Because they're not technical, they don't care.
Right.
But when you talk about their business and how something can affect, again, going back to you're going to lose revenue. You're going to have to stop working on a project. You're going to have to stop. Now that has real impact. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is you've got to get to the point where you're their trusted advisor. And let me explain why. They have an accountant. They pay them a lot of money and listen to them. They got a lawyer. They pay them a lot of money and listen to them. Well, you're responsible pretty much for their business because everybody's business runs completely on IT now. So if they're not giving you the same trust, there's a problem and you need to figure out what it is. Because within reason, they shouldn't be arguing with you over price. If price is the point that they're arguing over, then they don't understand anything you're talking about, the value you bring or anything else. Because 95% of the time, price is not about negotiation. Price is about, I don't think what you're telling me is worth what you're telling me it is. Not,
Right.
I won't pay that amount of money.
It's value, right? Their accountant keeps the IRS off their back.
Yep.
The attorney keeps all kinds of problems off their back.
Right.
As an MSP, you are keeping operational problems off their back.
Yep. And to Keith's point, business though, not IT.
Right.
Right. If you're focused on, I'm going to keep your email up and running, that's nice. Right. If you're focused on, I'm going to make sure you can communicate with all your suppliers and customers on a real-time basis, making sure that your business and projects continue to move forward. Oh, okay. And too many MSPs talk about the technology. Nobody cares.
Right. You have to frame it in terms of what matters to them, not the features of what you're selling.
Well, one of the things you can always ask, and I don't find a lot of people do that, talk to me a little bit about, because you're out there for a reason, right? If you're talking to a new customer, they've asked or they've agreed to see you for some reason. What's that reason? Why me? Why now?
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with asking that. I think too many people go, well, I don't want to ask that. That's, I don't want to ruin the... No. Why? Why did you accept my appointment? Or why did you call me? What can I help you with? And let them talk because they will tell you what is going on. The other thing is, when you talk about IT, talk about what problem they're experiencing. Because they're not experiencing a printer being down. Okay? What they're experiencing is they're trying to get a proposal out and they're unable to do so. That's their experience, not that the printer driver isn't working. That's right. The solution.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at this from a psychological standpoint, right? Which you mentioned earlier. And if you're talking to them about technical stuff, that's outside of their arena. You need to bring the conversation into their arena so that they start talking to you. You shouldn't be talking to them. Yes, you're presenting, you're trying to sell them something, but it's far more important, especially during those early meetings, for them to tell you the story, tell them tell you what bothers them, what keeps them up at night, what's keeping them from being the success that they want to be. And if you can solve those problems, you're in.
Absolutely. And too many MSPs go to let me compare my services and my pricing. Well, if you're selling on price, okay, and that's all you're selling on, you deserve what you get. Because the reality at the end of the day is, I tell people all the time, I don't have the cheapest product. Now I can tell you why you want my product and why you want it above and beyond anybody else's and what the benefits are. But I'm not going to sit there and fight with you. Look, it's too expensive. Great. Keep on walking. Because the
Yeah.
reality at the end of the day is, as soon as you get into a price conversation, now I'm not telling you there's never a negotiation at the end. That's not what I'm saying. But if the sales process is talking about price, then you haven't done something right.
Yeah. Well, and are you familiar with the one-page marketing plan, the book?
Yep.
Okay. So personally, I like that book. I listen to it. I don't read it. I listen to it. Probably once every couple of years. And I'm going through it again right now. And, there's always somebody willing to sell it cheaper than you. And
Yep.
so it's always a losing proposition. Mike just commented, live on price, die on price. Very true.
Yep.
I don't know why these comments are creeping over like this. Anyway, um, and then Degley has, commented a couple of things. He says, I think these questions can trigger them to think of their infrastructure and security should be at the forefront of their business. Yes, absolutely. We're doing kind of what we talked about before, where we're having them uncover the fear. We're having
Yep.
them uncover the chinks in their infrastructure and their security.
Well,
Because
you've
if
heard of
they
gap
come up with the
selling.
idea, it's much easier to sell.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard of gap selling. I mean, in essence, at the end of the day, remember something. You're going in and you know the problems. Okay? The gap is they know they have a problem, but they don't understand what it is or what the solution is. You do. But you going in and just saying, here's the solution, isn't going to sell you a deal. You have to help bridge that gap for them and get them to walk halfway to you, not you walk all the way to them.
Right.
And I know that sounds almost counterintuitive, like, well, I'm going to make them do work. Yes, you're going to make them do some work because otherwise they're not going to appreciate the solution you're providing to them because they won't understand it. And I don't even mean from a technical standpoint. Here's a perfect example. People always talk about when I've been at different vendors, I'm going to sell your product. No, you're not. First of all, you should never try to sell my product. My product is a sell to. My product becomes part of your security stack because you're providing a security stack that will protect your customers to the best of your ability. And I happen to be a piece of that adds a lot of value. And even if you're talking to someone that's fairly technical, that's fine. Like with Nodeware, you're going to talk about why continuous vulnerability scanning is different than traditional. That's it. Nobody cares who Nodeware is. Second thing is, you're never going to sell anything like that to anybody because one, they don't understand. Two, they're going to see it as more money that they don't need to spend. And three, they don't care. They don't care about what they care about is if I pay you, am I going to be protected to the best of your ability? So right now, I have an ongoing contest with several MSPs. I told them if they could take Nodeware though, not continuous vulnerability scanning, because that was my point, Nodeware, and go sell it to a customer, I will give them $500 out of my pocket, not the company's, out of my personal pocket. But they have to show me how they did it, that the customer bought Nodeware like they would buy a Toyota versus a Cadillac.
Right.
Because it ain't happening. And you got to stop doing that. Your security stack should be your security stack.
Right.
Period.
Yeah. Keith actually came up with a good comment here. Again, I shouldn't be surprised. It's Keith, right? We were having a discussion earlier today about artificial ceilings of like 400 per user or X dollars per tech, things like that. If that's the only way you frame it, okay, you're not selling on business value. You're selling a commodity,
exactly.
Right? And that's where we have to get away from. We have to get away from commodities. It's exactly what you said, right? You don't sell it as an add-on. You sell it as part of your stack. You as a professional have chosen this as part of your stack. They don't need to know what it is in order to protect them, provide the right service, whatever, to provide the solution for them.
And I'll share another secret. I mean, it's not really a secret, but I know a lot of MSPs don't do it. The reality at the end of the day, and oh, by the way, Galactic Advisors teach this also, which I thought was cool because I was already teaching it. They teach it. I'm continuing to teach it. So if you ever hear it, you'll hear Bruce talk about it also. The reality is you have two prices. First one is your normal MSP stack. That is the one that if someone gives you a hard time about your price, you could say, no, I'm priced just fine. Okay? Because I'm comparing apples to apples. However, this is my advanced security stack. This is the stack that allows me to keep you as safe as humanly possible on an ongoing basis. And oh, by the way, that changes constantly. To give you the same level of protection, I am constantly having to upgrade and spend more money on different tools to keep up with what's going on out there with the different tricks and, whatever that hackers come up with. And therefore, this advanced security stack, not only do you get, it's not a choice, but the price is going to change at a minimum once a year. That's it. It's going to happen. And you can put in a percentage. You can do whatever you want as far as the MSP goes to present it. It's going to change every year. Be aware. And in some cases, maybe it changes every 6 months because I've heard a couple of MSPs do this. Advanced security stack. Every 6 months, it's going to change. The price is going to change. So you name it. First half, 2023. That's the advanced security stack. Second half, 2023. You're allowed to skip one rev. You don't have the money or you don't want to, you can skip one upgrade. If you ever get two behind, you're out. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Because too many MSPs right now look, I know it's not my business. And what I mean by that is physical business, not none of my business. But the reality at the end of the day is there's so much risk being shifted to MSPs right now, whether it be compliance or insurance or whatever the case may be. Look, you think you're keeping revenue by dealing with people that don't want to take your security stack. You're being pliable. You're working. No, you're not. All you're doing is shifting the risk if they get breached to you, where you can end up in a lawsuit. And oh, by the way, if they had a compliance standard to meet and you let them get away with that, guess what? You may not know it, but they're going to have a case because I had to meet HIPAA, right? I didn't take their security stack. They didn't force me to do it. They didn't tell me I had to do it. And all of a sudden, whether you like it or not, they actually have a case. Yeah. You need to be prepared to walk away from people that won't take care of themselves, because all that happens is you get screwed.
Yeah. My favorite way, by the way, when we're talking about pricing, is my favorite way to take care of that like mid-year upgrade is to already have it in the price. Like I would have an extra 10% or whatever percentage I thought was appropriate in my price, because I know that I'm either going to change or I'm going to add a tool sometime during the year, and then I catch up at the end of the year, but my cost is already covered.
Yep.
And I just do that every year.
And that's the other thing that drives me crazy. Look, I'm a vendor. So in this process, I might get kicked out. Who knows? But if you're not evaluating your security stack at least once a year to check to make sure, do I have all the tools I need? Now, mind you, I've seen MSPs go overboard the other way where they have 22 tools and it's got duplicate features up. You don't need that.
Right.
But if you're not evaluating your stack against new things that are out there to see if you're providing the best services you can for the money you can afford, you're being foolish, because there's all kinds of new stuff. Now, I'm not telling you have to switch. Maybe what you have is fine. There's nothing out there that's significantly better. Great. Keep going with what you're going with. There may be one tool that makes sense to switch out. I'm not suggesting switching out for the heck of it, but if you're not internally at least evaluating that to make sure you're getting what you need from those vendors, then you're not doing a service to yourself. You're doing a huge disservice to yourself.
Right.
And as I said, guess what? I've had customers grow, upgrade, and kick me out. And you know what? Based on their reasoning in these particular cases, it was fine. I agreed with them. They had outgrown us. They went to a much higher level. and they needed a much different, and that's okay.
Right. It's the way it works. Speaking of stacks, Keith came up with another good comment, of course. He says, also, once you put away the blue light, there's gonna be a day when people don't understand what that means anymore,
Yep.
right? Because Kmart they're not a thing anymore. Stop selling stacks and move to selling business solutions. You have no competition to keep price down. This is a really interesting conversation to me because for years we have told MSPs to standardize on their stacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why we did it, right? Because standardization brings efficiency. Mm-hmm. However, and this is where I think Keith really gets it right, and this is why he runs a much more profitable business than most MSPs, is because he creates a custom stack or solution for every single customer. And I think you can do it either way, right? If you want to standardize on a vertical where they look very much the same, you can probably get away with that standardization. However, if you want that highly customized, highly, configurable solution for an individual client, you need to have some flexibility. Now, Keith is kind of correcting me here a little bit and saying they do standardize on their stacks. They just don't sell them that way.
Right. We don't sell it as a stack. We sell the solution. And that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
You don't have to call it a stack, but the idea is my security solution, you're getting. Okay. You don't have to call it a stack. Just, I have a process of keeping you safe. It's part of what we provide you, period, end of story. I mean, you don't have to talk about it in terms of stacks. Internally, you may call it that, as far as the products you use, but it comes down once again to my job is to keep you safe. My job is to keep you safe as humanly possible. I am going to do that. Okay. But it costs money for me to do that. And therefore there's going to be a price increase. I mean, it can be as simple as that. You don't have to talk about different, whatever. Now, if you're talking to someone in a co-managed environment, talking about the fact that I have this particular tool may make a difference. Who knows? Or it may just be I have this particular technology that's different than something else. But for the most part, I'm here to protect you. That's part of what I do for you.
Yep.
And they shouldn't care any more than that as long as I'm doing what I said I'm going to do.
Right. Yeah. And I think the ideal solution, back to stacks for just a second, is standardize what you can, but don't make it the rule so that it gets in the way of creating the right solution for the client.
Well, for instance, I don't believe SOC-SIEM, SOC-SIEM should be part of your normal security stack. Not everybody needs that. Not everybody would need it. However, you should have that solution available because there are going to be clients that do need it. And you're going to have to add it to your services that you're providing them. So I agree. I just think the core pieces, EDR, MFA, security awareness training, vulnerability scanning,
right,
that kind of stuff, you should standardize to get economies of scale. And so your techs know exactly what they're looking at and using or whatever. But to your point, there's still nothing wrong with saying, you know what? In this particular case, I don't usually use an XDR. In this particular case, you know what? I think I'm going to replace the EDR with an XDR. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think a lot of MSPs don't have the bandwidth and the ability right now, unless they've gotten really good at what they're doing or bigger, to think through that versus the fact that here's my security tools, you're getting my security tools.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, because I think we've gotten to a point where you have to think it through on a regular basis. You talked about yearly, even semi-annually. You have to think it through because things are changing that fast. Mm-hmm. Not just the threats, the way business works, operationally, all of those different things. And if you are not thinking through how your services are delivered on a regular basis, the old saying, you never step in the same river twice. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the business world, folks. The river may be in the same place, but it's a different river when you step in it today versus when you step in it tomorrow. And if you're not ready for that change, something's going to change you if you're not
Mhm.
willing to change to go with the times.
Well, one of the other things that I find, and it's interesting because it's a constant theme. I meet a ton of MSPs that are scared. They're scared to walk away. They're scared to say you're getting security, whether you like it or not. They're scared to raise their prices. They're scared of their own customers. And conceptually, I guess I understand that they're scared to lose the business. So again, it's not my business to run. And I think a lot of times that may be what it is. I don't want to upset a customer and lose business. But in today's world and today's reality, stop being scared. You're the expert. You know what's going on. You know what they need. Okay. You know you need to have talks with them about compliance and about insurance and about other stuff like that. Stop being scared. Be the expert. Have the conversations. Do what's right for them, but also do what's right for you. It's a two-way street. You can't constantly, I'll call it abuse, but whatever you want to call it, you can't constantly be taking the hits for that customer just because you want to keep them. Because in the end, if you actually sat down and analyzed money coming in versus time going out, you're going to realize it ain't worth it.
Yeah.
It just isn't. Yes, you're getting revenue numbers. But if you really look at the numbers, how much tech time you're spending, how often you're having to spend more time with them than your average customer, and they're paying less and beating you up on price, it's not worth it. It just isn't. And you've got to stop being scared of doing what you know you need to do, because guess what? You're also doing a disservice to that customer, as we talked about. You're not providing them with everything they need. You're not doing all the things they need to keep them safe. Because, talk about scared. A lot of MSPs have never had the conversation with their customer about, do they have or are they getting cyber liability insurance? And it fascinates me how many times I've heard an MSP say they went and got a policy and the insurance company sent in their MSP to make sure they had the security correct. Or, you know what? I never talked to them. They have a policy that they have to maintain, and I just got the questionnaire out of nowhere that I now have to answer. And half of these things I know aren't true, but they told them last time they were. That goes back to, if you have an account and you're going to work with them, then work with them.
Yeah.
Understand everything that's going on with them. Control your destiny. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to. And I hate to say that, but it is. I mean, I've literally talked to MSPs who have had insurance companies send other MSPs into their accounts.
Yeah.
And they didn't know it until the customer, told them.
Well, it's that old adage, right? If you're not having the conversation with them, somebody else is. And
Yep.
you just can't afford to be put into that position. We're in a situation where we are the experts, right? As MSPs. And you're doing a disservice to your client if you are not having these conversations with them.
Absolutely.
Gone are the days when you are the computer guy. You cannot be the computer guy anymore, because when they have a problem and now problems reach into the insurance and legal realm, they're going to call you regardless.
Yep.
So you have to have the conversations. You have to protect yourself from the risk as well as protecting the client.
Yep. And one of the things I always find interesting, and by the way, I know it's hard, is an MSP taking a client from a break fix client to a managed services client. And one of the things that, I've talked to lots of different MSPs and lots of people like you, meaning different vendors, we talk about it. It's an interesting concept, but the easiest way we've come up with as a group is, you have a break fix client. They call you when something's broken. Go out without them knowing about it and no charge. Do an assessment and see what's going on out there. Go to them with the top 3 things you found and say, hey, by the way, I was looking around as part of my job, and I found these 3 things that I know are going to break or become a problem in the next 3 months or so. Do you mind if I get a jump on it and take care of it now? And I'll charge you a little less for it. That's providing you're actually charging real money for it. Most of them are going to go, oh, those are going to break? Yeah, well, of course, go fix them. Do it again. Do it again. By the time you're done 2 or 3 times, you can say, hey, by the way, do you want me to just do this on a regular basis, proactively make sure nothing breaks? Well, yeah, great. I can give you a set price.
Yeah.
And does it work for every customer? No. But does it work from my understanding about 50% of the time or more? Yeah. Because basically they don't even realize they're getting managed services at that point. And all you have to do at that point and say, you know what? Why don't we continue with the proactive stuff to make sure you're never down?
Right. And by the way, I don't mean to talk badly about people who are still doing break fix or people who are doing residential. Those are legitimate markets.
Yep.
Now, they are lower profit markets. There's no way to get around that, right? And so when we talk about managed services, we talk about it because it is truly best for you and best for the client when we're talking about business clients where disruption is a really bad thing.
I talked to an MSP. This was years ago already, but he actually used an MSP model for his residential customers. Mm-hmm. He did a bunch of calculations, figured out, profitability and everything, and basically would charge them one price per month for the year. And with that, they got unlimited visits and a discount on parts, kind of like an HVAC company, like we were saying. And he was making bank on it.
Yeah. I did it. So I had, remember back in the day, I don't remember if it was Office Max or Office Depot, but they sold a managed AV, basically.
Yep.
They sold you McAfee. They put it on the machine. And if you ever got a virus, you could bring it back to Office Depot and they would remove the virus for you. Yep. And so we did a very similar thing. The only difference is we added in a tune-up, right? Because that's what we all did back then. And so for one yearly price, I didn't charge them monthly. I charged them once a year, and most of them didn't get viruses because I was putting a real antivirus software on there. Yep. And I knew, I knew before they did that they had a virus because I was using my RMM tool because that was the cheapest way for me to deploy an AV solution, by the way. And so I knew before they did, and most of the time I could actually remediate it before they ever even called me to schedule an appointment.
I mean, literally, based on the number of times you have to touch that, it's pure money. It's pure profit coming in. Oh, and it's a beautiful thing, and they love it. And it goes back to creative business models. There are so many different creative business models out there now that you can use. It just depends on what you want, what your goals are, where you want to be. Do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want to grow the crap out of it? Do you want to sell? There's just all kinds of ways to approach it depending on what you want to do. But at the end of the day, selling, I find, is the hardest part. Marketing is one of the hardest things. And I'm not saying it's simple, right? It's art and science, but it doesn't have to be hard.
Right. It's work, but it's not complicated.
Right.
It's work because you have to do it consistently.
I'm giving a presentation at ITBD, which even if they're listening, I'm going to say this, I freaking hate. They gave me a topic. I hate the topic. I told them I hated the topic. They said, that's your topic. And it's the difference between how, millennials and Gen X buyers buy versus people today. What are the differences? And I'm like going, I don't know an MSP that sells to anybody that's Gen X because the top age is 24. I'm not saying there are no business owners that are 24, but I would say that is not the bulk. But I'm a good sport. I put together the presentation anyway. But what I did was some of the solutions based on there, was some things that are, I'd say, worthwhile and important, such as, they want to see brand recognition, right? They want to understand that you're there. Okay. So as an MSP, great. Do an event, sponsor something, right? It's simple. Just get your name out in front of people so they remember, I'm Fork, Brazil. I'm assuming that's from. I was going to say, if you're bringing me Brazilian meat, you can be Fork all you want. But, it's one of those things that at the end of the day, you can do little things that can pay big dividends, right? Because sponsoring a little league team or a ballpark, right? A sign at a ballpark. Yeah, you're not going to measure hundreds of thousands of dollars against that. Okay. But if 2 customers see your name and therefore pick up the phone, it was worth every penny because they're not that expensive.
Right.
Or if you cold call someone and they go, why do I know your name? I remember your name. You know what? That's half the battle. Right. They know they've seen your name. They don't have to know where. They know they've seen your name. So therefore, you must be around. You must be okay. You're part of the community. So there are so many little things that you can do. And as I said, part of the thing came out of how Gen X and millennials say they buy, but part of it is just standard marketing sense, right?
Yeah.
Things you can do that aren't expensive, that get your name out there and differentiate you from other people.
Yeah. My best piece of physical advertising was a park bench outside of a sports bar in one of the 3 little towns that we served.
That's
by
awesome.
far. I don't think that thing cost me $100 a month, and I guarantee you I got 3 new clients a month out of that stupid park bench.
Yep. Oh, and that's why I said you can be creative. And again, some of these marketing things I hear all the time. I spent all this money on marketing and I didn't get my return. Well, if you're spending real money on marketing and not getting a return, that's a whole different story, right? Because if you're doing email marketing, all this other, there's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of times I find nobody did the pre-work. They're just shooting out emails or they're just whatever, and they complaining they didn't get anything back.
Right.
But in this particular case, you're not going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you're going to get brand recognition. People are going to remember your name. And I don't know about you, but if I'm looking for someone that does X, for instance, let's say AC repair, and I'm looking and I see a name and I go, I know them for some reason. I don't even have to remember why. It's just, I know them for some reason, so they must be around, so they must be okay. Boom.
Yeah. And the same thing goes for, content marketing, social media marketing. You don't do it a lot of times for the instant return. Now, if you're paying for social media marketing, yes, you need ROI because you have an expense against it, right?
Yep.
But so many times you can just offer information about a new breach or information about the latest update for the iPhone or whatever it is, and just have your logo in the corner. And because you put 1, 2, 3 of those out a week in maybe your Chamber of Commerce Facebook group,
there you go.
They're going, the next time they need a person who does what you do, they're going to look you up.
I had an MSP about a year ago. I hear all the time the Chamber of Commerce is, they're not worth the time in most cases. Some cities they are, which is fine. And I could see why. I was a member of the Chamber long time ago and had to deal with it and whatever. Mm-hmm. But what they did was they said, look, I don't want to go to meetings and everything. What I want to do is I want a spot on your website where every month I'm going to put up some tips and tricks and some information that people need to know about IT or what's going on or whatever the case may be. That's it. I'll pay you X amount of money if you'll give me that real estate.
Yep.
Well, guess what? They did. They got a tab. They got a place where they could put IT news, and they got a ton of business from it.
Yep.
And it wasn't a fortune, and it wasn't a lot of content. It didn't take them very long to do. And they didn't have to go to chamber meetings, and they didn't have to do a million emails. It was just right there. People started reading it because it was interesting or it was applicable information.
I did something very similar because I was the MSP for two of the three local chambers, for where we were. And, so I was able to I was in their newsletter all the time, all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And
No, I mean,
the channel may have changed, right? From newsletters to an online presence, a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group, whatever it is. And that's why you always have to figure out where your ICP hangs out, right? But the messaging doesn't really.
right. Well, it's kind of like why I give the presentations on how to sell cybersecurity. First of all, I hate giving product presentations. I bore myself. Okay. Next, I want to give something that's worthwhile. If I drone on about my product, who cares? Okay. I don't, and you're not going to. You want 5 tidbits that tells you about what I do and see if you're interested. That's it. So that's why I do the teaching, because you know what? That's fun. And people remember it. And you know what? It's great to hear people come to the booth and say, you know what? I got 2 things out of that I'm going to go apply immediately. That was awesome. Or will you send me the presentation? I want to send that to my sales manager. Or what, right? That's the worthwhile stuff. And guess what? Like we're talking about with park benches and stuff like that, may not get me an immediate sale, but you know what? When they're ready for something like what I do, who do you think they're going to think of first? Or if they hear somebody else talking about needing something like that, who do you think they're going to recommend?
Right. Yeah. And, there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to that stuff. But I also wanted to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about vulnerability management, because, obviously you work for Nodeware. Wanted to make sure that, we gave a little bit of time to that. So let's kind of pivot just a little bit and talk about, maybe specifically how you would sell vulnerability management, why it's important, and what Nodeware does.
Sure. Well, real quick, let's start with this. Vulnerability scanning is proactive. Okay. Vulnerability scanning is something that's going to tell you there is something that could be a significant problem. You need to fix it before it actually becomes a problem. Okay. And that is critical. Why? Because an EDR solution, SOC, SIM, right? All important. Not saying you shouldn't have those also, but that's, oh shit, something happened. Vulnerability scanning is like critical, high, medium, and low. Critical says, you know what? Microsoft, Cisco, whoever, they said that this is a problem because it's been exploited somewhere. Somebody used this to get into someone's system. You should fix this. And the way I was liking it is, if I go to the doctor and my family has heart issues, right? My dad had a heart attack, my mom had whatever. And they look at me and they say, hey, Matthew, we can see that you have the markers and, your blood test came back where this was a little off. We're going to suggest you do this, 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 and this. Okay. Well, I can choose to do those things and try to protect myself to the best of my ability. Or I can wait until I have the heart attack, hope the doctors can fix everything, and then make the changes then. Vulnerability scanning is the first one. Let me make sure something bad doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Now, going into what we talked about, traditional vulnerability scanning, what's out there usually right now. First thing is it's disruptive, okay? You have to put it on a box. You have to plan it after hours or weekends. Take out the box, let the box run, pick back up the box, print out dozens of reports, have someone sift through the reports, analyze it, pick out the things you want to present to the customer, pick out the things you want to remediate. Now go research the stuff to remediate and how you're going to remediate it. It's insanity. It really is. It's resource intensive because of that. You usually need 2 people. One that's going to do the scanning, one that's going to interpret the results, because they're different people a lot of the time. It's expensive. Do you know that according to all the MSPs I've talked to, as a matter of fact, several even larger ones, they estimate with traditional vulnerability scanning, and I won't mention the competition's name, but takes up to 5 hours between taking the box back and forth, printing the reports, going through 5 hours of time. How much is that employee's time? Could they be doing something else? I have a consulting company that uses us. They were doing 90 scans a quarter. They were doing quarterly vulnerability scans for their clients. And when we showed them what we did, they said, well, you're slightly more expensive. And I said, are we? Got the CFO on the phone. And basically, I confirmed first that the guy that was doing it could be doing a million other things. So what we did is we sat down. I said, I don't want to give you fluffy numbers. I want you to tell me, how much is this person's time worth times 5 hours if we could free them up to do other things? They estimate from their CFO's mouth that we save them about $25,000 a quarter.
That's not peanuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanity. So on average, if you have two $65,000 employees, and a lot of times they get paid more than that, an average traditional vulnerability scan costs you $300 per scan, not including the actual software or product that you're using. And the final thing is it's just out of date. As we talked about earlier, right? If you're doing 30 days, 90 days, yes, you're checking the box. But here's the problem. If I can attack a vulnerability because you're only doing it every 30 or 90 days and I get inside, based on recent studies, as a bad actor, the average bad actor stays in a network for over 200 days. So by the time you find that vulnerability and patch it, I'm in that door. I'm doing what I want to do. And a lot of times people go, yeah, but I'll patch it and I'll trap them in. No, you won't. They've been in there for 200 days. They found every other vulnerability and they could sneak out the back way. It's no problem.
They've made their own doors.
Exactly. So that's why insurance companies and compliance frameworks are jumping on continuous vulnerability scanning, which is what Nodeware does. Because you're working from a multi-tenant dashboard, not reports. It's running 7x24 in the background with no network degradation whatsoever. You're literally monitoring everything because between the sensor that brings down all the switches, routers, firewalls, IoT device, we have one MSP that thinks it's funny, so they left it on there because you can eliminate. They're scanning a Roomba on a regular basis because it pulls down an IP address, so they left it there because they think it's funny to go out to prospects and show them we're going to find everything.
Yeah.
But you blow the agent out using a silent script to all the remote devices, which is cool because of the fact that I travel. You try to schedule a scan, you ain't ever getting me. By averages, you might get me every 5 years. And I'm one that's in hotels and planes like you. You want to scan me. I'm going to be the problem child.
Right, right.
So with the agents, as soon as I connect to the internet anywhere in the world, boom, scans it and brings it back. So you're never missing that information. Critical vulnerabilities, the information is never more than 24 hours old. You're able to see critical vulnerabilities as they pop up and jump on them immediately and fix the problem. There's also remediation advice, a link to the solution. So you can go without doing hours of research and go fix it without having to deal with all that stuff. So there are just so many benefits as far as time savings, money, significant money savings, and providing better security to your customers to the point where we have found their insurance companies. We've found 3 times so far where the insurance company said, and I quote, "You're using continuous vulnerability scanning. Fine, we're going to give you a discount because of that."
Yep. I had that exact conversation with Rich Freeman a couple weeks ago.
There you go. So, what Nodeware brings to the market is all of those cool things. Plus, as you can imagine, channel only, MSP focus, MSP pricing models, full support, US-based support, and develop, blah, 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 blah. All the cool things that you would expect above and beyond what a lot of our competition does. But what I will tell you is, I don't care if you use us or not. You better be doing vulnerability scanning of some kind. Because if you're not, you're doing a huge disservice to your customer. You're doing a disservice to yourself because you're not proactively dealing with problems. You're just reacting to issues.
Yep.
Okay. And again, you need EDR. You need, if the customer's appropriate, SOC SIM. Not saying you don't, but I'm saying those are reactive tools where it's, oh shit, something's going on. Now I got to jump in and be reactive to it.
It's always better to take the medicine before the heart attack.
Exactly. And, finally, compliance frameworks and insurance is demanding it now. And it goes back to what we talked about. If you're not having those conversations with your customers or you don't know what's going on there, shame on you.
Yep, because somebody else is. And I think that's probably a great place to stop. Matthew, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Matthew with 2 T's .Koenig, Koenig at igicyberlabs.com.
Awesome.
Or they can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. They're more than welcome to reach out there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, sir. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the green room for just a second while I wrap this thing up.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Well, that is another episode of All Things MSP Live. Thank you for joining me this evening. A couple of things. I will be, actually, Matthew will be as well at Exchange next week. So, come by and see us at the Nodeware booth as well as the Ignite booth. And by the way, I have these cool things now. I have stickers. I have 2 different types. So if you see me at Exchange, come by and get one. And want to thank Matthew for being on here tonight. Thank Nodeware for just doing what they do and helping the industry. So thanks very much for being here. We'll see you in the next one.